welcome back to TimberBorn, and a little bit different video, but stuff that I like doing for the other game that I play, Farm Sim. I'm going to go through the update notes and just have a play around with what it means. So the experimental branch had a pretty big update last week. I've not seen anyone really talk about it in this kind of style, so I thought I'd give it a go. The first thing they have done is change how the bad water looks. So rather than that really bright orange, it's now a more toxic brown color, which is I kind of like that. It's a bit less fluorescent, which is quite cool. They've also changed the color of extract, and I missed that one, and I didn't plan to have a barrel of that handy, so we will just quickly drop down a storage. I'm in developer mode so that I can just show stuff off easily. And yeah, there we go. That's kind of a deeper red rather than it was green before. So I think that looks kind of cool. I kind of like that. The big change, which we're going to talk about in a little while, is the change to the water physics. And this was prompted by people wanting more ways to affect how pollution spreads. You know, at the moment, if bad water is near the land, you couldn't stop it. Now you can. So dams, levees, and floodgates will stop ground contamination, but they also affect irrigation. So if you put dams, levees, or floodgates in, they will stop irrigation spreading as far as well. And I'm going to have a play around with that in a bit. So the other thing that people asked for is more ways to use extract, because really there wasn't that much you could use it for before. So for the iron teeth, there is a new substance and a new building. The new substance is grease, and what that does is it improves the bot's condition by 1, and that gives the bots an 80% movement speed and 120% work speed boost, versus at the moment bots get 90% and 60%. So I guess it's going to be on top of that. We'll see in a moment. Yeah, so there we go. So tier 2 would be 120% work speed and 80% movement speed. So they're going to move a bit quicker. They're going to work a bit quicker. To make grease, you have the grease factory. That's an iron teeth only building. I'm on a folktale save at the moment. So I think if I scroll through, nope, they don't have any pictures of it in the dev blog. That's a bit annoying. I'm not sure if I'll load up an iron teeth save later on to show you a picture of that. But the grease factory takes 2,000 science to unlock, 30 gears, 20 treated planks, 10 metal blocks to build, 2 workers, so it's iron teeth only, and then to make the grease you need 1 extract and 1 canola oil to get 2 grease, which you store in tanks, and so it gives the bots a boost, gives the iron teeth bots a boost. We then have punch cards, which I'm going to show you in a bit. Those are made in the printing press, which we have over here. Those give the folktale bots that same boost. And in this case, 2 paper and 1 plank. That seems a bit strange. Let's just select it. Yeah, 2 paper and 1 plank gives you 2 punch cards. So punch cards are stored in warehouses, and they give the bots that same boost. And then the catalyst recipe for folktales, which I stupidly did not place down a building to show you either. But the catalyst recipe has been updated, and rather than sunflowers, it's now extract and maple syrup, which is good because it means we don't have to grow sunflowers. And 1 extract, 1 maple syrup gives you 3 catalysts. So I think that's quite a good change. There have been some balance changes as well. So the small windmills had its power output reduced to 150 from 200, and the large windmills gone down from 400 to 300. That's going to affect our Let's Play a little bit, so a little bit annoying. The wheat flour recipe's been sped up a bit, so half an hour versus 0.78. Cattail flour is down to 0.25 from 0.66. Bread takes an hour rather than 0.42, so you can make the flour quicker, but bread takes longer. And maple pastries now take 1.5 hours rather than 0.55. So it's kind of a big change again. We'll see how that affects our Folktales Let's Play, because all of those are Folktales changes. And then on hard mode, you now only get one guaranteed drought before you might get bad tides. So that's going to be rough. I am going to switch to doing a hard mode Let's Play at some point, but not yet. So let's have a look at some of these irrigation changes. So I think the first one that's going to really affect people is, you know, the classic early game way of irrigating land is a water dump, 4 levees, and you switch it on and it gets filled up with water and it irrigates a big patch of land. But now levees block irrigation. So when this dude makes his way over, there he is, this dude, and he puts water in, we will see that this now has no effect. So there is water in here. He's going to keep going until it's full, and it doesn't irrigate the land at all. That's going to really change how people play, particularly early game. If you've got access to dynamite, so we've got the same thing set up over here, but with dynamite, with a hole dynamited, then it still works just fine. So there we go. Just let him put a little bit more water in, and you still irrigate a nice big patch of land. So it's still an option, but if you're using levees, nothing. If we get off of the build menu, there we go. You can see it's completely full and it is having no effect on the land because levees, dams and floodgates block irrigation. So what does that mean? I didn't show you the punch cards running. Let's just get that running. So we've got a paper mill. We need some planks. So let's just quickly plug in a pile for planks. I've never done one of these videos for TimberBorn, so a little bit different, but here we go. So let's unpause it, and we'll get some punch cards made, and our bots will be quicker. So it doesn't really affect this. So let's have a look at, we've got this patch of land over here. I'm actually going to very quickly, with the power of dev mode, just remove all these trees so we can see the effect. So we are irrigated out to pretty much along here, just roughly sketching a bit of a path. Give or take, we're irrigated to about here. So if we start putting some levees in along here, what happens? We need to give it a little bit of time to take effect. I'm trying to do it so we stay in the daylight as well. I might need to build a few more levees. I've only done a little bit of playing with this so far to really just to check roughly what the effect was. But you can see now that this land over here is no longer irrigated. So the irrigation obviously is coming in from all directions. So if we do something like this, you'll see that now this whole tract of land is no longer irrigated because the levees are blocking it. So that's what happens if we place them like that. I say some of this is me experimenting and learning. I have done some testing to understand how it behaves. What happens now if we put them on top? So what I had wanted to do was do a pre and a post, but both of my games updated, and I thought I'd just show you what it is now. And most of you probably are aware of what it used to be like. But again, if we put them up here, it is also blocking the irrigation. I think that's kind of weird. because there's land underneath them, and it feels to me like that should allow the irrigation through. But that's where it is at the moment. With this update, they are changing things as they go, so that might change. But that means if you had been relying on maybe having levees across all the way across here and some bigger dams here to hold lots of water, that's now going to stop this land being irrigated. And if we just kept going with the levees down here, and you can see that the land is going to dry out a lot, so that's bad. The benefit is if I'm in dev mode here, so we can just throw in a couple of several bad water sources, and you'll see that this side of the river we've got a lot of contaminated land. So trees are dying out, whereas on this side, this land is completely uncontaminated. So that's a plus. And I have come up with what I think is a relatively cunning plan. So if we get rid of these again, we'll get some fresh water back. I'm going to get rid of, this is quite resource intensive, my cunning plan. So I might make it more of a late game thing, but it is cunning. It is as cunning as Professor of Cunning at Cunningham University. If you are not from the UK or watch UK TV, that might make zero sense to you. It's a quote from Blackadder, roughly. A very rough quote from Blackadder. So my cunning plan is to use floodgates. So in the same way that I don't know how it works if we put them on top. I don't know how this is going to affect things. Let's just let that run, and then I'll show you my actual cunning plan. So you can see it's having a bit of an effect on the irrigation. And this is a bit of foreshadowing of my cunning plan. This is why you shouldn't experiment live. But no, it's not behaving like my cunning plan did. So let me show you my cunning plan. So we just delete all of those. Do love the hour of dev mode for doing some of this stuff. Right, if we put them in the water, so yes, you're constricting your flow, but if you're late game, maybe you've got access to dynamite as well, so you could make space to put these in. So at the moment they're set to a half. If we set them down, I mean they're not really, and they're not really affecting the irrigation at all. So just for completeness, I should have done a nice long straight piece of river, but anyway, because I'm going to show you the effect on the bad tide as well. So they're all down. Our land's nicely irrigated. We could be farming it. Job's good. And now if we put them up, slowly, takes a bit of time. So I did all of this testing because I was curious how it would affect things in my own games, and then I thought I would show you guys. So you can see that that is starting to affect the irrigation. If we let that run on a little bit, and we'll skip ahead to the morning. Not quite severe as an impact, actually. But, so they're all up at 1, except for you. That might be why it's not having such a severe impact. There we go. So they're all up at 1 now. What does that mean? There we go. What does that mean for bad tide? So if we grab our bad water sources again, bad water's coming through, and contamination spreading along here. It spreads up here, but no contamination. So the floodgates block the contamination when you have a bad tide. Let me just set something else up and I'll show you what I think is a interesting way of manipulating this. Using the simple triggers mod, what I've done so far is set most of these up so that they are triggered off of contamination. Now, the actual placement of this stream gauge, you might want to experiment with. It kind of varies as to, if you put it here, it catches the contamination coming in early and closes them, but also the water's clearer here. So you open them a little early. So the other way you could do it off of using whether there's a bad tide or not, but I don't think that's ideal because it does take time for bad water to flush out. So you'll have to experiment a little bit. But if we go into the last set, we're going to advanced. So this is the simple triggers mod. We're going to attach a stream gauge. We're going to click on the stream gauge, and then we're going to use the contamination level. So I put a low threshold of 1%. So once the contamination's dropped below 1%, it will set the height to 0. If the contamination is above, I put 3%. That might be being conservative. It jumps up to 1. So we start the game playing now because the contamination on here is at 0%. They're all open. This is all irrigated as it was before with our paths. Now, if we start to add in some bad tide, I'm going to just put 1 in. I'm going to put it in way up here so that the effect is more gradual. So we'll keep an eye on the contamination. Let's run it at double speed. And you'll see that as the contamination goes up, there you go, instantly jumped up. Gates closed, irrigation falls away, which is bad. Obviously, if you've got crops there, you would need to do something with those. But no contamination of the land either. So, and then if we go in and use our delete tool and delete it, then as the contamination starts to drop, which it should, as we have clean water coming through now, it'll take a little while. There we go. Contamination is coming down, and when it drops all the way down, you will see the floodgates open again and irrigation. There is a little bit of contamination still because down here the water's not completely clear. So I said you might want to put it here, adjust your trigger levels, but I kind of like that. I think that's an interesting way of dealing with it. So I will just click on, if we pause it, let's just click on one of our bots. So see, he's now got biofuel, catalyst and punch cards, so nice big boost there on the work speed as well. So yeah, that's the current edit to the experimental branch. So you've got to bear in mind that these don't work anymore. This does still. You could maybe mess around with butting up against some land, so that would irrigate the land portion, but obviously not the levee portion. That's an option. You could maybe mess about with just having a water dump and pausing it and giving up the little bit of land that gets wet. You could do that, but the counter to that is you can now manage contamination, which I think is really cool. And we've got some new things to use Catalyst for. So if you found this interesting, please click the like button. Comments, questions, suggestions, what I've done wrong. My first video like this for TimberBorn, stick them below. If you've just found the channel and you think this kind of stuff is interesting, subscribe, let me know in the comments, and I will see you next time.